Hello, beloved,
Welcome to the Sacred Sister podcast,
where we normalize the magic and sacralize the mundane.
In this podcast, we open up dialogue on metaphysical subjects, self-healing tools, expanding consciousness, and deepening awareness.
We're here to support you in co-creating a life full of healing, meaning, and magic. And the lineup of the season is fire, so make sure to subscribe if you're not already.
I'm your host, Britt, certified self-inquiry and alignment-based smart flow yoga instructor, self-healing song channel, and personal transformation coach, guiding women to gain radical self-awareness in order to reconnect with their most expressive and vibrant self.
And I'm your host, Hannah, a certified astrologer, ordained priestess, and rebirth coach. And I help women integrate past life and ancestral traumas to give birth to their higher self and manifest their wildest dreams into reality.
We're really grateful that you're here.
And together,
we're here to serve as your
Sacred Sister.
Let's dive in.
My body lays all around me. May I be beauty, my life your limb. Oh body, please let your song come through. This little voice sings for you. I'm listening with each breath I breathe.
One of the most poignant voices currently floating about, Ayla Nereo is an otherworldly artist who shares the fruits of her soul. That's a quote that was given about today's guest by the Huffington Post. Hello, sacred beings, and welcome to another episode of Sacred Sister Podcast. I'm your host, Britt, and I don't even know how to introduce today's guest, other than truly one of my deepest and most heartfelt guides in this lifetime to date. In 2016, I discovered Ayla Nereo in actually a YouTube video where her music was used for a women's gathering called Spirit Weavers, which I've mentioned on this podcast if you've been listening for a while. And actually in seasons 2 and 3, we have featured many facilitators that I've met at Spirit Weavers and who've made profound impacts on my life. So truly, Ayla has led me to some of the most transformative spaces and retreats and gatherings that I've attended in my entire life. She's such a huge guide for me, and I just can believe, as a matter of fact, because this is the way that universe works. This is a part of some of the greatest mysteries that unfold naturally and organically whenever we are following our path, when we are following the whispers that come to us that might not make sense, and when we allow ourselves to trust in where we're being guided, even if we can't see where it's going. We talk about that in the interview. The way that I like to describe Ayla's music is this really conscious weaving of inner world insights mixed with this really deep devotion to being a maiden of the earth, a tender of this planet. Her songs are woven with these very beautiful messages of deep connection with the planet and all beings everywhere. Ayla has quite the number of albums, and with the Hollow Bone album release, it gained her global notoriety. Since then, The Code of the Flowers has been released, and 2019's By the Light of the Dark Moon. She has an upcoming album that hasn't been released yet, and her first single from that album that hasn't been released yet is called Breath I Breathe, which is a snippet of the song that you heard when you clicked onto this episode today. If you want to listen to Breath I Breathe in its entirety, please visit the link that is in the show notes of this episode and listen further there. She also partners with her life partner, David, aka Polish Ambassador, American electronic musician and DJ, in a music collaboration called Wildlight. All of the music that I just mentioned is absolute fire. It is so good. I wanted to give a little bit of a backdrop and a backstory before we head into the interview so that you can really feel into the special magic that it is for someone like me to have someone like Ayla on this creation of a podcast. I've been to see Ayla a number of times, which started in 2017 when Curtis and I attended her set at the Oregon Eclipse Festival for the total solar eclipse, which was such a beautiful, beautiful experience. In 2018, I traveled to Kona, Hawaii for a 4-day movement and songwriting retreat called Ancient Voices that Ayla led with somatic movement guide Aya Papaya. And that retreat, gosh, unfolded such a petal of my own personal development work, which was discovering a lot of my own suppressed sexual trauma and sacral chakra blockages that I never knew existed inside of myself. Really, I just went because I knew Ayla was going to be there and I wanted to surround myself with her energy. In 2019, for the first birthday that my daddy would have after my mama passed away, I took my dad, who actually passed away in a motorcycle accident in September of 2020. I took him to Ayla's concert as a part of his birthday celebration that we had in San Diego. And I actually just realized last week while I was preparing for this interview that that was the only concert that he and I ever attended together. And when I think back to the actual concert night, it was just such a beautiful experience because my dad was crying at how beautiful the music was. And it was just such a sweet memory, such a special moment that he and I got to share together that I'll honestly cherish forever and ever, my entire life. Partnered with attending online concerts and a songwriting course offering that Ayla had called The Living Song, Ayla has been a guiding light to my life in so many ways, dropping little bits and breadcrumbs that help me step more deeply into my own powerful embodiment just by showing up to her own soul's mission and path. It's my sincere hope that each and every one of us listening to this podcast today holds a deep-seated connection with a guide that we feel is aiding our health, happiness, and fulfillment in this life. In these wild times especially, may we choose connection consciously and stand firm in the awareness that we are not alone. In addition to music, Ayla is a filmmaker, dancer, and environmentalist. She has committed herself to bettering the world through her art. She proves to be an activist artist across multiple fronts, partnering with nonprofit Tree Sisters, an organization that uses concert ticket proceeds to plant trees across the globe. In this episode today, we discuss healing the throat center, receiving song as a channel, self-acceptance and the creative process, slowing down as an act of personal revolution in such fast-moving times. And we talk about Ayla's homestead life, how it's informed her musical career, and how it's connected her more deeply with nature. We discuss these things and so much more in this episode, and before we hop in, I want to give just a slight piece of information because, as you can tell, we have not started season 5 yet. We are in the midst of the creation process for season 5, securing our guests, and oh my gosh, we cannot wait to release an introduction, preview for season 5 and what it's going to entail. Season 5 is the season of the Hierophant, and we are going to be bringing on guests that really help us feel into the revolutionary and into our own inner freedom and mystical teachings and guidings from the divine. So more on that later. We don't have an official launch date for season 5 just yet, but we ask that you really remain patient with us and make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast so that you do get notified whenever our next episodes are out and when season 5 does start. I'm actually in the midst of moving. I think this will be the last episode that we release. Actually, I'm sure, because I'm moving in 1 week out of this house that I've spent 7 beautiful, beautiful years in. And Hannah's about to give birth to her second child, Jacob Orion, in about a month and a half. So we have lots and lots of movement. We ask for your patience and well wishes in the process. And the fact that we are starting this next chapter of Sacred Sister podcast with none other than Ayla Nereo, literally like my freaking hero of life. I know that she's going to listen to this episode, so I'm trying not to fangirl out too much, but I think I kept myself pretty okay for this intro. Without much more, I hope that you really enjoy this. There are so many deep nuggets of wisdom in this episode, and without much more, let's hop over to Hannah's astrology segment and get into the interview. Thank you so much for your listenership, and have a beautiful day, beloved.
Hi, sacred being. This is your host, Hannah, and we are now looking into the inner blueprint of Ayla Nereo. And we are so excited. I just love doing these inner blueprint segments for each of our podcast guests because we can really feel into their archetypes. And then during the interview, you can actually start noticing how some of those stories and experiences and the way that they express themselves is reflected within their birth chart. And it gives us inspiration, motivation, and also just this deep knowing that we all have an inner blueprint within us, and it's our free will and free choice and magical potential to make the best out of it. And, every single guest that we've had on Sacred Sister podcast made the best out of the birth chart. So it is such a beautiful testimony of how astrology can turn from a more abstract knowledge system to a very practical, hands-on experience on how it is being expressed in this physical reality in this lifetime. So let's look into Ayla's chart and see how she's expressing her archetypes. Ayla's sun is in the 2nd degree of Aquarius, so it is still on the cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius. This is also called the cusp of mystery. And so combining Capricorn and Aquarius energy, we have Capricorn being the achiever, the boss, the manager, and Aquarius being the rebel and humanitarian and free spirit. So one of the missions and one of the ways that Ayla is shining her light is to really leave a legacy behind and achieve something that is for the good of humanity. It is really important for her to do something that is of service to the evolution of humanity, to the whole of the community, and leading that tribe towards a higher version, a better way of living. And her sun is in the 6th house, which is also the house of service and wellness, and really being discerning of what to take in, what information, what food, what people, just like really discerning about what is really good for her health and her mental wellness, emotional wellness, and how can she be of the most service to the world as a whole, to her community, to her people. Now, her moon is in Libra, in the 2nd house, and the moon shows our family, our upbringing, but also what really helps us to recharge, reconnect to source. And for her, that is in the 2nd house, which is the house of Mother Earth. It is that really sensual way of experiencing this physical reality. The smells, the tastes, the touches, the trees, the grass, the flowers. The second house is all about really experiencing the simple moments and making them magical. The moon in Libra shows that part of the recharge process for her is also living in sync with that. Libra is so good with cooperating and harmonizing and balancing. And so it is part of her way of truly recharging herself when she can live in sync with Mother Nature, with Mother Earth, seasons and cycles. And also feel like that she is a team player, that they are on the same path and they're merged together as one. With her moon in Libra, she's also a natural artist, and she brings beauty and love and harmony and peace everywhere she goes. And it's this very grounded way of how she shows up in the world. And then, interestingly enough, she has a grand trine between her sun and her moon and her Chiron, which is in the 10th house in Taurus. And she's going to talk about that Chiron, because Chiron is the wound inside of us. It is something that we are really scared of at first. And then when we are feeling deeper into it and we allow ourselves to heal through it, that's when Chiron turns into the key to our deepest gifts. And so for her, Chiron is in Taurus, and interestingly enough, Taurus rules the voice. And it is in the 10th house, which is the house of the public, our public role. So it was really scary for her to express herself through her voice in public. That was her Chiron. And she is going to tell us how she moved through that fear and actually made that the deepest medicine of hers. And now she's showing up in public because of how she has moved through this pain and wound. And she's helping others heal through it as well, through her retreats and workshops. So it is such a beautiful flow here in the Grand Trine. Whenever we have a Grand Trine in the chart, it shows that it's just a natural flow. It's our intuitive gift that we're sometimes not even aware of how gifted we are there, because we think, oh yeah, everybody has that. Everybody knows how to do that. But when we really tune into that, then it's like, oh wow, that makes us really special. So it's beautifully depicted in her chart, and she's going to tell us more about that in the interview. Then she has a Leo rising, and Leo rising means that she's a natural performer. As much as there is something in her that was afraid of performing in public, she loves to entertain, and Leo loves to also be like the bonfire. I love to see Leo, it's a fixed fire sign. It's like the bonfire where people dance around and have a good time and be entertained, and it's warm and generous. That's what Leo loves the most. So Ayla, in her natural expression, is that fire for others, where we can dance to her songs, where we feel good about ourselves and we feel good about life. And she really helps with that. Leo is ruled by the sun, and her sun, we talked about, is between Capricorn and Aquarius in the 6th house. So the way that she entertains is actually through her entertainment, she helps in the evolution of humanity, because her songs are not just beautiful to listen to, they're also very deep in the lyrics and very transforming if you really listen to the words, and even not the words, but what is written between the lines as well. And that is her way of performing and entertaining and really spreading that fire around the world, spreading the light, and, really find an outlet to spread her message, because that message is so potent that she has, and the world needs to hear it. And with her new song, Breath I Breathe. That is such a beautiful message that she's sharing with us, and we're so excited to be diving deeper into that song and into her story in general. It's absolutely beautiful. This whole interview is such a magical gift to sit with Ayla, and I'm really excited for you to experience that too. So if you want to know more about You in a Blueprint, then go to my website, hannahchristensen.com. Use the code SACREDSIS for a special discount. And sketch on in a blueprint reading. Make sure that you do it pretty soon, because I'm going to give birth to my little boy I wouldn't say any moment, but within this next 8 weeks or so. So the sooner the better. And then if you haven't followed us on Instagram, do so. I just want to mention this too. @Sacred Sister Podcast is our Instagram. It's just so fun to share this gift with you, because sitting with these magical beings that we've been sitting with is such a gift to us, and we are really, really happy to share that with you and share the message and the stories and experiences, and normalizing the magic and sacralizing the mundane. All right, love you, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Let's dive in.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Breathe. Breathe deeper. What is inside you? Let it be. Breathe it deep. All that you are in this moment. Every sensation, every thought, every feeling. Welcome it. Breathe it in. Breathe it out. This, as Mary Oliver says, your one wild and precious life. All of this, all of you. Give yourself permission to be all that you are with your breath. Breathe in and out yourself. If not now, when? There is no other moment. Breathe it in. Fill your heart with your breath. And as you breathe out, let your heart ripple into the world. Breathing in all the love for yourself, for this one precious life, and breathing out that love into the world. Breathing in all of you as love and giving it with your breath out into the world.
So beautiful.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, sister. And welcome to Sacred Sister Podcast, Ayla Nereo.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow, it is like even sitting here listening to that beautiful guided meditation, that beautiful moment of breath, invitation. I had just so many feelings stirring inside. I feel like if I knew when we started this podcast at the beginning, spring equinox 2019, if I knew that we would have Ayla Nereo on the podcast, I don't even know if I would have had the bravado to start the podcast.
Oh.
I think it's just such a lovely piece of how really moving from your soul, moving from your heart center, which I feel like is a stream of consciousness that I hear from you in different ways all the time, that it can truly lead you somewhere that you could never imagine for yourself. And oftentimes something far beyond and far greater than you could ever imagine for yourself.
So true. So true.
So we really welcome you. And for anyone that doesn't know of your music or perhaps wasn't familiar with you and what your story is, would you illuminate us as to what is your story and when did you take the leap to follow your dream and become a musician?
Ooh. Well, I probably can't share all of my story in this moment, but I can share that last bit of just taking the leap. I mean, it's even that last bit is a lot of stories, honestly, but it's been a thread, I would say, growing up. Creativity was always present. My brother and I were homeschooled or unschooled throughout our whole childhood, and creativity was a big thread of how we were encouraged to explore. And I wrote songs and I danced and I made movies and I did so many things and I wrote a lot. But I was afraid to sing. I had a kind of irrational fear that I was tone deaf and no one was telling me. And so I was very afraid to be heard, and specifically singing. And it wasn't until college I actually put down a lot of my creativity in high school and early college. And then at the end of college, songs sort of just started being written. I was listening to a lot of Bob Dylan and words were coming back, and I was living in a hippie co-op, and there was just, again, the presence of creativity and kind of a well-roundedness, because I went to a very academic school, and it was very kind of rational mind brain. It was a great school, but often college can have that. And so this was like people growing food in a garden and baking bread, and I think that whole holistic way of living just awoke something that I'd forgotten a little bit. And so songs started coming out, and people kind of had to pull me out of my shell and asked me over and over to sing. And then it was a really long, uncomfortable journey of getting in front of people and singing and being really, feeling really awkward and feeling really unsure, or just not, like sometimes really just not enjoying it. And then I had one of my breakthrough moments was doing an EFT, the tapping technique of emotional freedom technique that works with the meridian system to open up energy while you're accepting what's going on. And we went into it was a 2-month-long journey, and we went into a lot of deeper layers. And I really encountered my own fears, essentially fears of being killed for having a voice, which it could be ancestral, could be collective memory, could be past life, could be all of the above. And so really encountering that and moving through that very shortly after, about 6 months after, I had a moment on my first solo tour ever, doing house concerts up the West Coast, of really feeling like it was like the universe was telling me, like, this is what you're here for, and you can either keep dilly-dallying or you can commit. And for me, dilly-dallying in that moment was continuing to live in a really high rent area of Oakland, and having to do side jobs to pay for that rent, and the commitment was to just find a different way where music could be full-time. And then the synchronicities just unfolded from there. I applied to an artist residency, someone recommended, I got in. Through that, it gave me the time and focus to do a Kickstarter, which then funded my next album, and, met David and started Wildlight, and like all these synchronicities started happening from that commitment. So that's a little bit of the journey. That's like the very abbreviated version.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love that you were mentioning astral, ancestral, and past life traumas, right? That can hold us back, and it is so real in this lifetime. And a lot of times, like, we come with these fears, and we are actually here to break the cycle of those fears. So wherever we're like really scared of something, it's like, that's what you meant to do.
Exactly. I know. It's like, I think maybe I said it at the retreat, or I've said it at different times, of like, if you have like a passion, but it's terrifying, it's like the universe being like, go there.
Yes.
Then you're like, oh no. Oh yes.
Would you say there was ever a moment where you were thinking of quitting?
Well, I did have a moment before doing some of the deeper unlayering work with my fears of kind of inwardly, I almost decided, like, I think I'm a recording musician, because performing is so uncomfortable. Being in front of people is so uncomfortable. And I'm really glad I stuck with it. I'm really glad. I think again, it was that thing. It was like, it was really uncomfortable, but some part of me was feeling it, and some part of me knew I had to continue. So there was that. And I think I've had moments, quitting is not an option. The songs will come. It's just part of me. But yeah, I think especially in this time of pausing from touring for a long while, it's a long while. And it's really helped me break a cycle that I was in of just doing it because it's what you do, and actually examining, like, how often do I want to tour, and actually I want to tour a lot less than I was, because for sustainability for the earth, and also sustainability for my own body and energy. So yeah, just all those assessments, but never quitting. I don't think I could.
There was something.
We're glad you didn't.
Yeah, totally. I remember, actually, just now that you're saying all this, at the retreat, there was a moment when you were talking about sometimes having fear coming up, but when you're on stage, and how you had learned to, like, the way that you would get yourself out of that mind space is by, like, making some type of movement that maybe you wouldn't naturally do, to actually, like, move and, like, get yourself out of that space.
Totally. It's like the overall kind of I guess movement or thought behind that is going through, not going around, not trying to, like, oh, I feel uncomfortable, I'm gonna just ignore it, but actually being like, okay, I'm thinking too much. Okay, go deeper into the song. Go like, what are the words? Okay, close your eyes, get deeper in, whatever can or like get deeper with the audience. Like if I'm feeling separation, like how can I connect more? How can I go deeper in that direction of the feeling of, and yeah, physical movement is really helpful. That's actually a process that I've done for myself, and also in the courses and things that I've done, is like just keep it moving as a mantra, because that's how creativity wants to flow. Like a river. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes. And we actually have a question from the audience, from Caitlin, and I feel like it fits perfectly into this right now. And she asked, did you ever have throat chakra blocks? And if so, how did you move through them as a musician?
Well, yeah, I think that earlier bit I shared of just this fear, like it was really like, I just am not going to sing. Like it was a shutdown. And then even when I did start singing, it was like they would literally turn the mic up to the max because I was singing so quietly. So it was just, and even my first album, which is literally me singing into a computer, like there's no microphones or anything. My voice I sound like a different person on that album, because, and even over the albums, I can really hear my own settling into my voice in a way, you know, and so, yeah, it's just more timid early on. But moving through it, I mean, definitely the EFT work helped a lot. Singing, just, I mean, it's that movement piece. It's like, we can't go around, we have to go through. So to go through the opening of our own throat center is to literally put sound through it. And the more we just put sound through it, and we might think it's horrible, and then we might say that's okay for it to be horrible, and then we might weep because we've never given ourselves permission to sound horrible, and then we might love ourselves, and then our voice changes, and then all of a sudden it doesn't sound so horrible, you know. And it's like, it's just being with that process and just keeping it moving, and just even on your own, even just quietly, like, or loudly, or in nature, or in the car when no one's listening, or whatever, just to like move your voice is, the only way is through.
Yeah, such medicine.
So yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, it's good when emotion comes up, for just to say it to anyone who's listening, like that's a really good sign. It's a really good sign, and to let that move through is actually often what I can even feel it right now. It's often the emotion is actually unlocking a lot of gates that need to be opened. So just full permission. Like, it's so important to give ourselves full permission for all that wants to come through. Yeah.
I feel like I'm a little quote box for you, because I remember the day whenever we were doing little vocal exercises at Ancient Voices, and you said more than once, the more fun that you have, the better you sound.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's something that I think back to all the time, because I'm sure myself and Hannah and everyone listening knows what that feeling of constriction or restriction and the like pressure that can build in the chest whenever we're feeling that, fear to connect, fear to express. Am I going to sound good? What's it going to sound like? What if I mess up? All these internal pieces inside of ourselves, and how I can really, really feel its presence whenever it's there.
Yeah, totally. And oftentimes the way, like you said, to find fun, to find playfulness with even something that can feel quite heavy. And it's okay to feel the heaviness and to weep and all of the things. And also, one way is to, and I've done this a lot, and we might have done it together, of like, sing those words, like those very words you just said, like, it feels so tight, I don't think I'm gonna sing very good, I'm so afraid right now, and it starts to be a game kind of like just trying to find the words for what you're feeling. letting it move and giving yourself permission to sound ridiculous, and maybe even like jumping around a little and literally like shaking your body out in any way that, that we can find an element of play with ourselves and wonder and curiosity is like, it's coming back to that child space of innocence, of just like, there's no story, there's no program, there's nothing that tells me I can't sing. That innocence doesn't know any of those things. So if we can play, then sometimes, generally we find that little child inside, which also can be emotional, but really great and important. Essential.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Yes. And I love that you just mentioned too how important it is to name it. Just naming the fear.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can maybe feel like a block in our throat or a ball in the throat, and we're like, just gonna breathe through it, just power through it, just ignore it. Like that's kind of like the standard motivational speeches that we tended to hear, at least in the past, of like, just ignore those negative feelings, just focus on the positive and just keep on breathing, power through, you got this. But instead, like, no, let me name it. Let me actually go into it and see what is it. Yes,
totally.
I love it. Yeah,
and in a way, it's like it's like it's like in the old stories, like the underworld journey, like the dark feminine, like the going into the darkness. The darkness is where everything arises from. And so, especially in in certain communities, like there can be a strong emphasis on light, which is great. And light, yes, we need more of it. And like the power of our own, depths and the darkness and the underworld of ourselves, the shadows, and like meeting them and not being afraid. And that cultivates everything for us, from which then we can give light.
Yes, and it's such a power of us women too, or feminine people with mostly feminine energies within us, because we have this, it helps us to connect deeper with that feminine part, and through that feminine part we can actually shine our light brighter. From what I feel as like in astrology, for women especially, the moon is super important, because that's like the feminine side, and the more that we dive into our moon, the easier it is for us to shine our light more authentically. And for men, it's the other way around. There, it's like easier to go into the sun and then they go into the moon, And it's so fascinating to feel into that. Obviously, there are exceptions, but just in general, we can feel into how can I dive deep first, and through that I rise higher. And we're talking about this a lot on this podcast. We both are vivid lovers of shadow work and shadow integration, and then manifesting the light that comes out of it. So
so important. So it's essential for being whole, right? Like you said, the moon, the sun, the feminine, the masculine, like we all have all of it. And we're not whole if we don't consciously go into all those parts of us. I feel
and it
for myself.
It seems like what I've experienced as well, that I actually wasn't anticipating, which is such an amazing bonus of doing that shadow work, is how much we're able to actually heal and bring that lifted energy into the surroundings that we root ourselves deeply into. Like when I first started coming back to my voice in 2017, and then found out you were doing ancient voices in 2018, and really committed to opening back up my voice and returning to song, returning to allowing myself to express, and then talking to my husband more about it. And he never, ever let himself sing. Like in his whole life, it wasn't really a thing that he did. He was really into like atmosphere and just like R&B and hip hop and underground rap. And over time, allowing myself to sing more and allowing myself to express more with my communication and through song, just these portals started opening, and he started, singing a little bit in the car, and then immediately talking about how bad it was. And, it was a beautiful thing to like hold hands with and start sinking into as a couple. And now he's such a little crooner, and he's like, oh my gosh, he's like, oh, I'm just like starting to sound good. And I'm like, yes, you do.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, because it's like, it's inside of us all. And another thing that you talk about that I resonate with so deeply is about how all of our ancestors had song.
Yeah. And no one cared if you were on key or off key, because that wasn't the point. And I think that's part of it too, is the like, there's quite a fixation on like music as career and the fame and the like production and the this and that around it. And in the older times, like all of our ancestors sang to make offerings, to give back to life, to what was feeding us at every moment. And that's what song, and it was also a record keeping, and there was beauty, and people really appreciated a really good singer. And but everyone sang, because that's just how you give back. And yeah, it's good to remember that. I think for me, that's been also a part of the opening, is remembering that piece, that if I orient towards making an offering, then it becomes kind of irrelevant what I think about how my voice sounds, because it's actually all about what's coming and how much I mean it from my heart for whomever I'm singing to. If I'm singing to the waters to thank them for my life, who cares if I'm out of key? It doesn't matter, because it's all about where my heart is at, and if I mean what I'm singing, and if I'm really giving a true offering. So that can help. That's a really great way, actually, to open the throat more, is to just have it be not about you, and to give to all the non-humans, to just sing to the non-humans, because it's such a gift to the spirit worlds and to the nature worlds. And
yeah, I love that so much about your music, is that you bring Mama Gaia, Mother Earth, and the waters and the lands and everything just into your song, and offering and praying, and just being in such gratitude and reverence towards them. And that is also your new single, Breath I Breathe. I love it. Breath I Breathe. And it's such a beautiful way. And there's a quote, it's an ode to the body of nature, singing of the valleys and movements of the land as the curse of our own bodies. Ayla's words tell the story of where we come from and urges the listener to remember our interconnection with each step we take. So beautiful.
Yeah.
And so how did that song came through to you?
That song it started in New Mexico, and it's actually been beautiful to reflect on where it came as a point of reference for how, because in New Mexico, I feel the very strong connection to inner guidance and to both the spirit worlds and the like vast beauty of nature and the connection with the sky and the earth and the elements. And then part of the song then was also written in Sweden. I went to Sweden for the first time, and I was struck. I was just so struck by the clarity of energy there, and I felt intuitively that it had to do with how, as a culture, they're a very mature culture. I would say on whole a lot more mature than the everyday American culture. They are taking care of their lands very beautifully. They have, I think, 50% of Sweden is uninhabited, I want to say, or 80%. And of that, like another 50% is protected. Like just don't even touch it. And they have these laws of that you can basically walk anywhere. They don't really have fences. They just respect each other and in a different way, and they respect the land in a different way, and they take care of things. I didn't see trash once. And maybe it was just my journey, but it felt very clear. And so that the most of the rest of the song came through there. And then here where I live as well. And it's really that, not only the connection to the land, but remembering that the land is not separate from us, that this planet, that all of nature and the elements, like they're in our bodies, and the rivers are coming out of our eyes, and our emotions, and how clean are our oceans, and how clear is our air in our lungs, and remembering that the trees are breathing into our lungs every moment so that we can be alive, and just remembering like my body. One of the lines is, your body lays all around me. May I walk gently upon your limbs, which is acknowledging the body of the earth. And then the next chorus says, my body lays all around me. May I be beauty, my life, your limb. And really from that is a feeling of like I'm literally walking on myself. I'm walking on an extension of myself. I'm moving through a world that is also me. And may my life be beauty and create beauty back, giving back to this amazing, well, even by saying this amazing planet or nature is like to separate it. So it's a lot of the song has to do with just not remembering that we're not separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you say too in the lyrics, or oh body, you're not here for me to use. My life you've given, and I choose to see with each breath I breathe. And I feel like that is so potent in this world. And as you were just saying, how when we talk about Earth as a planet, it makes it such a neutral thing, right? Such a it's an object that we're here to use Earth's resources, and we're living on this rock that is shooting through the galaxy. And I wonder, how do you feel like it would shift if we as a collective changed our perspective from seeing Earth as merely a rock in the universe, and instead seeing her as that extension of our own body, as source, as mother? How do you feel like it would change in the way that we're living?
That's such a, I mean, if we could all just hold that vision for everyone, for ourselves and everyone, to change that way, it's so powerful what you just said. Some people are, and they are the ones who are walking in right relationship. And it's literally every step. It's like, and I have so much to grow into better right relationship. I still buy things that are going into a landfill, and I've had many moments of, I mean, we try and do trash bricks and keep our trash, but my goal is one day to just have no landfill. There's no away, it's not like it's our backyard. It's ourselves. We're literally, like if we imagine the earth as our body, we are taking resources from ourselves, turning it into something that then we are putting the waste back in ourselves, and not actually taking care of that process very well. There's a lot of ways to take care of that process. So I think when we have that consciousness, and if everyone had that consciousness, everything would be different. Like we would be like, actually, how can we just not need like to buy so much stuff? Because then that actually will, it's like learning, like, how can we make the best quality things that will serve us for life?
Yeah.
And then learn how to fix them when they're broken, and not create waste, and have not this excess packaging, help people all over, everywhere, grow more food and trade with each other and share resources and plant more trees and clean up the waters and help people who need help. And, you know, it'll be, and it is for so many, a holistic system in consciousness. It is a holistic system. And when we tune into that, it's really, it ripples pretty quickly into our day-to-day choices. And I'm really holding out the vision also. There's like two parts. One is holding the vision for the ones who are causing the most, proportionately the most damage, the largest corporations, for the people at the top to have that kind of awakening and to remember that they're hurting themselves. And then the other piece is to never slip into the idea that it's their fault. Mm-hmm. Because if I slip into that idea, then I don't take personal responsibility for the stuff I'm buying that is fueling that whole system. So I just have to, yeah, it's both ways. It's like, we are not outside of it, we're part of it. And there's some bigger things to change. And also our way of walking is very, very powerful.
Yeah. And I love how you said that in the meditation, how when we breathe into our heart and it ripples outwardly, we just let it like breathe out that love outwardly. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the more that we tune into that connection to earth within ourselves, it ripples outwardly. Yeah. And instead of, you know, pointing fingers and be like, you should change, which can only do so much because most people get offended when we do that, you know, feeling into that connection within ourselves and then let it ripple outwardly. I love how you said that because I could literally feel the energies rippling outward, and my little baby boy was moving too.
Oh, yeah. Some of the most inspiring people in my life have been people who are leading very quiet lives with very deep impeccability with their walk. And I'm inspired by, I just witness them and it changes my behavior. I'm like, wow, they make sure that they have jars and bags in their car so that they're ready when they go to the store. So they never have to buy extra waste. And they don't buy packaged food. And wow, that's so inspiring. Could I do that? Yes, I can, definitely. And then so it's like, yeah, just to remember that we ripple all the time, you know, and to tell someone to change, like you said, can make them like defensive, like, because then it ignites that part of like, I'm not good enough or I'm doing something wrong, versus being a shining, joyful example of right relationship is very inspiring. Yeah.
One of the most endearing pieces that I find about you is your groundedness, the sense of embodiment that I feel whenever I'm witnessing pretty much any creation that you do. Yeah. And I'd really love to talk about that a little bit because it's so powerful. And there's this really, like I was saying, embodiment, this sense of empowered self, this sense of self in the way that you know who you are, you know what you believe in, you can tell that you walk the talk that you outwardly present to the world. And one thing that I love,
I'm still learning so much.
Of course, as we all are, but something that I really love is that within your social media presence, you prompt regularly so many of us for the slowing of the self and the stillness and deeper listening. And we feel your deep connection to the earth in every song that comes out of you. So for you, in an age that can be so quick with movement, can you share with us what the benefit is of slowing and how slowing can help expand our lives?
Yeah, I really feel I wouldn't have properly been able to answer that question 2 years ago because I was going really fast. So my answer would have been different, but now I've had the experience. And I think that's an important part, is we don't actually know until we try it. It can feel really kind of intense. At least I've experienced this, like when everyone else is going fast, the concept of taking a week or 2 weeks or a month off of social media, for instance, can feel like, what's going to happen, you know? But once we do it, it's like, oh, not only did no one care and I was, but I feel so great and I feel more connected to myself. And now I actually know how often and what's important, and my field is clear, and, you know, and so we don't know until we try. And slowing down is so, it feels like one of the most important acts of personal revolution that we can take in this time, with things going so fast. When we choose to slow down, we are choosing to actually find our own rhythm, which is aligned with the rhythms of nature and the rhythms of our own nature, and not the rhythms of the mind. And it ripples into everything. It ripples into every thought and feeling and the synchronicities that show up in our life, and everything we create. You know, everything we put out in the world is sourced from our center. And if we're off center, then we're putting out off center. And if we're centered in ourselves and slowing down enough to actually settle ourselves, to be better listeners and tune ourselves to our true north, to our true guidance, then everything feels like everything ripples from there. And then we can actually be of a deeper service. This is how I feel. I'm not trying to sound like this is the absolute truth, but just my experience is that I'm far more of service when I'm centered, and I'm really not very helpful. It might look like I might be busier, and I might look like, either to myself or others, that I'm doing things that are helpful, but on a true level, I'm far more helpful when I'm available for what wants to come through. And I make myself available when I commit to that which centers me.
Yeah.
So I've taken, I mean, it's cool to hear what you said about that you think I'm sharing good things on social media, because I feel like I'm very rarely on there these days. It's kind of like sporadic, like taking a week off of social media has become kind of normal for me. It's just not a big deal anymore. It used to be a really big deal. And I decided last winter solstice to take a 2-week media fast, and it turned into, specifically from social media, and it turned into 6 weeks, like without me even thinking twice about it. It was just so desirable. It was so wonderful. And since then, it's just been a different relationship. It's just not, those things really work us up in a different way, and to put it down and to connect to the deeper messaging systems of our soul and our heart and our guidance system. It's a great service. It's a great service to everyone.
Yeah, I love to hear more about your processes of how you're receiving the song that you're about to create, and how the whole creation process is working for you. Because for me personally, when I am inspired by something, I receive the download, and then I get this fire inside of me that's like, I want to do this right now, and I want to show it to the world right now. And it's so funny because I just had that experience, because I was creating this Moon Magic boot camp. And it's just like, it just flooded through me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I was like doing for new moon and first quarter, full moon last quarter. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start Lionsgate opening, which was like a week after, like within a week. And then I'm like, oh, I'm totally going to do it, la-di-da. And get all this download, everything. And then just like a few days before, or a few days ago, my guides were like, you were actually not supposed to do this on the Lionsgate opening. You're supposed to do this for Sagittarius solar eclipse, which is in like 4 months or so. But it's like they told me to do it now. Like they made it seem like, oh, it's going to be right now so that I can download everything and I put it down into paper. But then they're like helping me to slow down and be like, now you can just like take your time to get all the things ready and plan ahead. And, because my own nature, I have Mars in Aries, is like, I get inspired. I want to show it right now. So I would love to hear how your process is on that, of like having the inspiration of the song, and then when do you publish it and how does that process look like for you?
It's changing right now. But I also share some of those same things. And I just want to say good listening, like, because I think either we can talk ourselves out of something like that. Like we feel all this energy and we feel this like idea of a deadline that's soon. And we kind of say, oh, that's no, but you like rolled with it. All this stuff came through. And then you listened again when it was like clarification, actually not for right now, for later, but you just had let all that come through. So that's awesome. I feel, it's a constant, like it's constantly changing. And I think that's part of it. It's just, we just listen for what's next. And it's like one day the creative process looks one way and the next day it looks different. I'm having a lot of fun right now co-writing, like not only working with other people as producers, but also co-writing songs with people and learning a lot about the creative process through that, of like not being attached to my own ideas and trusting myself to say when I feel something about a song or like an idea, just to like put it out there, and all of us like saying yes to the process as it's happening. And there's, what do I want to share about that? It's such a big one. I think the keynote is listening, and so that applies to the prompting to go get a guitar and just play around for a while. That might lead to then something coming through. It applies to the moment of songwriting, of like really listening for words and just letting what wants to come through happen. No censorship. Can edit later. But just like staying with that energy of receptivity, and following the energy, like the example you gave, like really like that energy of like, ooh, something's happening, or like, wow, I'm inspired by this, or just to pay attention to those feelings too, and to really honor them. And the more we prioritize that, the more it wants to come through, because it's like a bridge that we're creating that strength of communication with our muses. That's how I think of it. Just building that bridge stronger through showing up and through just engaging. It's not always going to be the most amazing creation, but just by engaging with our voice and with the creative process, it just strengthens those muscles and strengthens that bridge, so more can come through more easily. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much to say. I feel like I'm leaving everything out, but it's a big question. It's a good one. It's what like my whole course is all about.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of, I loved that course, The Living Song, last May. And I love how you just said about going out and getting a guitar, because when I did that last May, I never realized that I had placed guitar really outside of myself. I literally had never really yearned to learn how to play. I grew up playing flute and piano. And then somehow in June, I found myself going to a little guitar center, and I was looking around at guitars and I was like, wow, I kind of think I want to get a guitar. And Curtis was so surprised. And then I really let myself think about it for a couple weeks. And a couple weeks later, I went back, and this one just shined out above all of them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it just magnetized me over toward it. And it honestly surprised me so much. By July, I had a guitar and I've been playing now for about a year, and it's just opened up an entirely new portal inside of me. And it's just so exciting how stuff like that can happen. Totally. I feel like.
That is exactly what happened to me with harp.
Yeah.
I was like, I just need to learn it now. And this woman who teaches in town was like, you need to take a lesson. And it was the first time. She actually recorded on my song Stars, and she recorded some harp pieces. And at that recording session, she was like, why don't you learn? And it was the first time I'd even had the thought that I could. Like, oh yeah, I could take lessons and learn. And because I guess I had this idea that it was like a hard instrument, or it'd be too hard or something. And so I just decided to start taking lessons with her. And immediately it was like my whole system was just lit up. And so, yeah, it's good. It's good to follow those promptings.
Would you say that you now realizing, I'm like, oh yeah, you're plucking strings with the guitar and with the harp. Do you feel like when you started learning harp, there were some of those little habits or natural pieces of guitar playing that started coming through in harp playing?
Yeah, I think because I play both piano and guitar, and I specifically do a lot of finger picking on the guitar. And so I think that helped. Having like an awareness of the scales with piano, and then with the guitar having like finger muscle kind of, like just familiarity. But I think most of it was just the joy. And I wanted to practice. I'm now at a plateau. I've like gotten decent, and now I need to get better. And my harp teacher actually just emailed me today. She's like, okay, come back. Helpful.
And you were saying that your harp teacher comes from town, and so can you share a little bit about where do you live and like how your surroundings look like?
Yeah, sometimes I'm a little ambiguous about exactly where I live, but I live in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. And there's lots of pines and cedars. I'm like looking out at them right now, and oaks, and it's a beautiful, we get a little snow in the winter, but mostly it rains, and there's a lot, it's very dry right now. The Dixie fire in California is really large, and it's a ways north of us. So we've been getting some smoke from that. But it's a wild moment on Earth. Yeah.
Yes, and that's actually part of I feel like this kind of like nature setting that you're living in, and it seems like also communal setting.
We live with 6 others. David and I live here, and then there's 6 others that live on the land. Little community of sorts.
That's the dream.
Yeah,
that's the dream.
It's wonderful.
Did you buy the land and just kind of started it?
Yeah, it's been a 7-year journey.
Oh my God. So you bought the land, and then you already had your friends ready to go, or it's just gonna...
It's just evolved as we went, because also it was raw land, and so it was a lot of like building up cabins and spaces, and the space I'm in right now is our communal space, and is a straw bale structure, which is really, it's a good one for California heat and cold. It keeps good insulation. But yeah, we've had a lot of iterations of people living with us over the years, and we've changed a lot. We've come to more and more deeper clarity of like what we're doing here. Yeah. And honestly, this last like year and a half has brought us even more clarity, because I think a lot of the lessons that we're still learning from this last year have to do with systems that aren't working and aren't like sustainable, and they're serving some but not others, and seeing food not being on the shelves really brought home for us the importance of food sovereignty. And so we kind of threw ourselves way more deeply into growing food. And prior to that, we'd had some gardening, and one year we like paid someone to come help us with the garden, and we had different, but it wasn't like a central theme. And then now the people that are on the land now came here over the last year or two with us being really clear that this is actually a primary part of what we're doing. So everyone's really participated in helping all of our gardens grow, and we all eat from the gardens, and we've now got animals. We thought it was gonna be like many years down the road, but we have chickens and ducks, and we just got 3 goats. So
congratulations.
Yeah, so we're figuring out systems for that too, especially as you know, David recently did some shows in Colorado, and we took kind of a van trip, and it reminded us like, oh, we're not like, we do still love performing, you know. And so we're just looking at now like, okay, we kind of went deep in the homesteading thing, and we're going to continue to do that because it just feels like that's just what needs to happen for life. That's just like a deeper, not deeper, but it's kind of inevitable is the feeling I get, like when I look at what's happening with the crisis in the climate all over the world and here, and it just feels like it's really just what needs to happen for anyone who's able. And then how can we also create systems so that more people are able to do the growing of food, to grow food locally. But I forget where I was going with that, but just with touring, we're also looking at like new systems where we're doing that, and everyone who's living here has an opportunity to do that, but also maybe some people are holding potentially larger responsibility for when others need to travel. And it's just we're learning so much, and there's so many models out there, and we're just constantly rolling with all the learning.
I love that you're just rolling with it too. I love that you just kind of started it and get into it, because there's like a part of me that's like my biggest dream to do this.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me thinking I need to have it all figured out though before, but
yeah,
you know, that's just
we didn't at all have it figured out, but we're figuring a lot out, and
it's a process.
We learn, and it's helped us so much to talk to people who are also doing it, and to, you know, there's an amazing book called I think it's called either Growing a Life Together or Building a Life Together. And it studies these, I think maybe 6 or so different communities that have really had a lot of success over time. And so that has been quite a resource for us, and also just other people who are homesteading, and just talking to them and visiting farms and visiting people's gardens and going to the farmer's market, getting to know who's growing what in the area. One of the biggest things though that anyone can start doing is to get to know your neighbors, and to build a network with the people that live right near you, or even extended neighborhoods, like just in a vicinity that you have regular access to build that community. That's something we're looking at right now too, is like community is not just who you live with day to day. It's actually a much larger network, and part of our resilience in these times that are going to keep changing and challenging us, especially with resources, is to have strong local systems where we can trade with each other and share resources and help each other. And and we can start that right away just by making friendships and building those bonds with the people near us.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I love how it perfectly weaves into the other question that we had received from our Sacred Sister podcast audience on Instagram. We put up a question box, and the other question that we chose for this is from a dear sister of ours, Sage. And she asked, what has been helping you move through this collective shift in our country? I feel like you just touched on community and your homesteading piece, but are there some other elements that you find particularly helpful?
Yeah, I mean, we also touched on another one, which is slowing down and turning off media. Like that has been one of the most helpful pieces. I think that with everything that's been happening with uh, you know, people's health concerns, with social justice, racial justice, like just all of the things it can be. It's really, there was a period of time, especially early on with COVID, where I was pretty, I mean, me and everyone else was pretty like in the digital world. Also, people are alone more, you know, not so much with others. And so it was part of what prompted me to get off media more, was feeling both the imbalance in my own body of so much screen time, and also the emotional imbalance that it was creating in me, because it's very hard to have a complete and holistic and nuanced conversation in those formats. And these topics that we were and are discussing and working through as a collective are so nuanced. And so what happens is that they're being approached in a sort of like, I feel this, like almost like these topical layers. And so I ended up just feeling like, wow, I just can't do that. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to leave. And I just, yeah, it's just, there's been a lot of volatility, and there still is a lot of volatility around a lot of different things right now. And people have different perspectives on a lot of different things. And everything that is up right now is so nuanced and so worth communicating through, and so worth hearing the other's perspective. But the way that these sort of social media formats work, it makes it hard. It makes it really hard. Unless people are really committed to staying with it, it makes it hard to have that kind of a deeper listening and communication and empathy. So yeah, I feel like I really participated in for a while, until it got to a point where I was like, again, I don't think that I'm actually of best service to the collective when my system is getting like kind of hijacked by a lot of this. And so now I'm very selective about how often I go there. I have a good hack for anyone who's interested.
Yes.
I have, this is my main phone. And then I have a backup, like I have an old phone that I had kind of stopped using, but I decided to put all my social media on the other phone. And it means that I need to be on Wi-Fi when I want to use it. So it's not always with me. It's not like what I text with and what I check emails with. It's like, that's just my social media stuff is over there, and I have to seek it out. It's not just there, and it's completely destroyed the part of me that would just check on stuff, you know. And destroyed is a strong word. Dissolved that habit. So I don't know, it's kind of silly, but works.
Yeah, totally. What I do sometimes is just delete the apps too, and then I have to like make the effort to reinstall them, and you know, then I gotta think twice if I want to do that or not.
Yeah, that's really good for a fast, to just like remove it and completely. I'd say those things are very meditation is part of that too, slowing down to just be in nature and slow our breath and have a daily practice of centering in ourselves, whatever that might be, to get off the media more often as we can, as often as we feel is, you know, just enough for us to get the information of what's happening in the world. Any more than that is really going to do other things to us that might make us less available. So it's just a choice. But we're all really needed right now. You know, there's powerful changes happening, and a lot of consciousness coming to the forefront, and a lot of shadows coming to the forefront. And And the more we can make ourselves available in that deep listening way, in that calm nervous system way, the more that we can actually help in this huge, huge shifting time. That's how I feel.
Beautiful. And when you look into the future of humanity, what do you see?
Whoa. It's interesting because I feel, how to answer that question. I feel that I can contact a very bleak future if I follow the train of looking at of the unconsciousness and the kind of division and fear and everything related to that, and greed, and the ways that those are driving a lot of things right now. And then my more natural side is, or my essence side, chooses to see a very hopeful future, because I look for the ways that conversations like this are happening. I look for the ways that people are choosing. I look for the ways that this whole last year and a half has had so much challenge, and it's brought up so much. And also it has caused a lot of people, I have chills right now, to like really slow down. I know so many people who started a garden last year who've never gardened. And those kinds of things make me really hopeful for the deeper layers of shift. And I really am hopeful for the way that that the plant medicines and the I'll just go ahead and say it, particularly psilocybin, is becoming more respected as a therapeutic plant for people to work through very deep things. And the way that, sorry, plant, it's a fungus, it's a fungi, but the way that and a lot of the subtler plants too really help us to open our awareness, to open our hearts, to really know ourselves, like we were talking about with the new song, to know ourselves as a part of all of this. And I have a lot of hope for consciousness to really exponentially open that way, and the effects of consciousness opening that way are good beyond imagining, because, and there's no stopping it. And that's the thing that I settle on, is that those denser energies of fear and greed, they don't actually understand love. They don't actually understand interconnection. Bless them, but they don't know what they're up against. So, so it's like, I just keep myself there. And then I also remember, as an interconnected part of all of this, it's really up to me, like, where am I operating from? Am I operating from fear? Do I have a feeling of scarcity? Am I operating from, wanting what I want, or am I operating from giving as much as I can give? Am I, and I always try to look at the world that way too. When I see things going on, as hard as it may be, whatever the reflection is, I take it as a reflection of myself. Like, if that exists in the world, that means it's in here, because we're fractal like that. So that helps me to not others.
Yes. So beautiful. I got chills too when you were talking about this. It's like, it's so important, because that's I feel like is also part of the media, is that it can suck us into this negative mindset of what the future is going to look like, and it's so easy to settle into, we're going down, or whatever. But then to consciously choose, this is truly what is going on. And a lot of the good stuff is actually not shown in the media, because the media thrives on drama.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I consciously choose to seek out the good things and see the positive effects of everything that is happening. Just yesterday, I went to a hypnobirthing class because I'm gonna give birth. Next month is my due month.
Oh, wow. Oh, blessings
Yes,
to your birth.
thank
Yeah.
you. So I went to this hypnobirthing class together with my husband, and we want to do another home birth. We already did a home birth with my daughter, but we want
Oh,
to do another
beautiful.
one with our baby boy. And I just loved seeing so many couples there and with their partners. They're like women and men coming in, and they're saying, we're here because we're not trusting the medical system anymore, and we really want to tune deeper into this birthing process and make it a celebration and not an emergency, and just kind of shift that mindset from the old way of looking at the body's functions, and rather just really honoring the body and her beauty and her strength, and like knowing that through all of our ancestors, they all knew how to give birth. Like our body knows on the deepest level. So it just was so beautiful, because literally COVID and the whole thing that is around it created so many more people to shift their perspectives and be like, I'm gonna go deeper into nature, into my body, into my soul, and I no longer just stay on that surface level. So
yeah,
it's a beautiful development to see.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Can we pause? Can we edit this? I just realized the time, and I need to let someone know. I scheduled everything in the same day, and I need to just let them know I'm running late for a different interview. Is that okay?
Yes. And we're wrapping this up now too. We're gonna do the sacred questions now, and then
okay. Do you think, like, should I say 3?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
We can wrap this up within the next 5 or 6 minutes, and then you can have some moments to breathe.
Okay. I just sent it to him. That's all good. Oh, thanks. Okay. And back.
Yeah,
thank
we
you
really
for sharing all that.
Oh, yes, Hannah, thank you. Man, this whole conversation has just been such a beautiful blessing. We really want to thank you for carving out time from your beautiful life to sit and chat with us, to extend yourself to the Sacred Sister podcast audience. And at the end of every single episode, we have these sacred questions that we ask our guests, and these can be answered in a shorter format. So it's just 3 little questions.
Okay.
And the first one is, what does sacred mean to you?
Held deeply in the truth of one's own being.
So powerful. And who is a sacred sister to you, and what does it mean to have a sacred sister?
Oh, I feel very lucky to have a few sacred sisters. Yeah, I would give shout outs to my sisters, Rachel and Bria and Lindsay and Sharon and Roxy, and sacred sisterhood for me is sisterhood that is deeply held in the that we are holding each other in what we feel is sacred, that we're showing up for each other for what we hold as sacred, and we're holding that for each other. Yeah.
So beautiful. And how would you say that you personally turn something mundane into something sacred?
Ooh, I like that one. Going deep into it. Yeah. Looking more deeply, listening more deeply, loving more deeply, being more grateful for it. Just opens the moment, whatever the moment is, just opens it up wide as a miracle.
So beautiful. Thank you so much again, Ayla. That was amazing. It was so beautiful to sit with you. And do you want to share with us how people can connect more with you or anything that's upcoming?
Yeah. Well, my website is where everyone can find all the things. There's links to all my music and the course and videos. All the things are there. And as for upcoming, I would say there's just a lot of music coming, and I'm very excited about it. And yeah, I'm doing a new format of releasing more singles. Both because that's where things are kind of turning music industry wise, but also for joy, because I actually I'll still release albums, but there's something so feels so good to me about giving a song by itself and being like, because each song is so special. It's like a child, and so it's like, here's this one, now here's this one, instead of them all being in one moment. So I'm really excited to share more of these little beings and big beings as they come.
I'm very excited to listen to them.
Yeah, very, very. Ayla, thank you so much. And we know that you have much lined up in terms of interviews for today. So we want to give you as much time to breathe between your next interview and this one.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was a really, really delightful and beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. We look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Yay.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, sister.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Aww.
Yay.
Yay.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. We want to thank each and every one of you in our Sacred Sister podcast audience that has held on to the very end of this episode. We love you so much. Thank you for sharing your time and energy with us. Thank you for everything.
And we are so excited for season 5. New things are coming up.
More uploads.
And special episodes. And special guests.
Very, very special guests. We're gonna do probably a season 5 intro or something. We'll let y'all know what's coming and what we have planned for season 5. It is going to be quite the mix up, and we're very, very excited and inspired by it. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We love you and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, beloved.
Bye-bye.